Tony's heart was pounding in his throat as he sat in his parked 1970 black Lincoln Continental on the side of the street. He looked into his rearview mirror at the boy, who was still knocked out cold, and then to Lou's dry cleaners across the street. The sky was starting to get dark from the clouds, and a light haze of rain began to sprinkle upon the car windows. "This is so fucked," he said aloud, opening his car door. He then scooped the kid in his arms. "Oof," he grunted. "What do you people feed each other to get so damn big?" Walking carefully across the street, he walked into the dry cleaners. He pushed open the door with his hip, and a bell rang loudly as he did so. There was not a soul inside the waiting area, which Tony was grateful for, and the desk up front was empty with a load full of hanging clothes in the background. "Hey, Uncle Lou!" Tony shouted, walking through the door. He heard the quick clapping of leather shoes on a hard tile in the distance. A short man with a full head of thick, white, slicked-back hair rounded the corner, his large brown eyes growing ever larger with shock. "Jesus, Tony, what the hell happened?" He shuffled over to Tony and helped him place the boy in one of the waiting room chairs. Tony was rather fond of his Uncle Lou, and he was very close to his father. He put a lot of trust into him. Although he had his fair share of odd habits, like an over-interest in wearing bowling shirts, or what looked like them, all of the time, with designer business pants and shoes, he was extremely reliable. "Is Eli here?" Tony asked, knowing very well Eli's schedule. Eli used the dry cleaners as a front. In no means did it make any extreme profits, but was one of his many facilities for conducting his family business without attracting too much attention. "Yeah, he's in the back office," Lou said, rubbing his chin with concern while looking at the boy. Tony, without hesitation, started walking behind the counter. "Keep an eye on the kid." Lou looked back down at the boy, sunk over in the chair, and flew his hands behind his head anxiously. "Sweet Mother of Mary," he said aloud. Tony walked quickly over to the back office and was shocked to observe the door was open. Not as shocked to see Jim and Eli both chumming it up in the office, laughing hysterically. Thick cigarette smoke plumed out of the doorframe, while Eli sat comfortably, feet kicked back on his large oak desk. "Well, well, look here, Jim, what do we have here?" Eli kicked his feet off the desk and took a long, comfortable drag of his cigarette. Tony nabbed one of Jim's cigarettes that was resting in his shirt pocket and grabbed his gas lighter out of his hands. "Hey, you don't smoke," Jim said, annoyed. "Tony," Eli said, still amused and laughing heartily, "how'd your visit go? Did you get anything?" Tony took a quick drag of the cigarette and coughed. "Nope." He inhaled. "What do you mean, nope?" Eli asked, his smile wiped away. "What did you two play cards or something, what?" Tony was silent for a moment and finished another puff. "He shot at me, I shot back." "And?" "He's dead." "He's dead," Tony said, putting his cigarette out in the ashtray. Distaste started to grow on Eli's face, and Jim reacted. "You fucking moron, we asked you to do one stupid task. One task!" "Oh!" Lou shouted in the distance. "What the hell was that?" Eli grumbled angrily. "Hey!" Lou shouted again. The trio shot out from the room and drew their pistols as they stormed back towards the waiting area. Within a heartbeat, they burst into the waiting area, pistols at the ready. Tony lowered his arm. When he saw Connor holding a chair menacingly above his head, standing over a stunned Lou, with blood trickling slowly down from the side of his face. "You freaking hit me!" Lou squeaked, bewildered at Tony. "Who's this?" Eli spoke with a hard tone. Connor's eyes moved from Eli to Jim and rested upon Tony. Rage began to erupt across his face like wildfire. "Ah!" Connor screamed, charging towards Tony, with his chair raised, ready to strike. Jim intercepted Connor before he had a chance to make a move, and pinned him hard onto the ground. Jim huffed. "Strong kid," he wheezed. "You all right, Lou?" "Well, Lou was interrupted by Eli. He will be fine. Just throw some ice on him and clean up this mess. He paused. I'll ask again. Who the fuck is this? He rotated his pistol lazily while turning his attention towards Tony. He was in the room you told me to visit. Tony shrugged. You two. Eli pointed his pistol at Jim and Lou. Watch the kid, and you, Eli said sternly at Tony. Come with me. Eli sat back down in his office chair and extended a hand towards Tony, inviting him to take a seat. Tony didn't budge and remained standing. Eli grunted and lit another cigarette, and closed his shimmering gold cigarette lighter with a hard click. What's the matter with you, huh? What the fuck happened over there? I told you. He started shooting at me. I killed him. Tony shrugged, leaning on the leather arm of the chair. Eli chuckled. You know, it's that same attitude that got your father killed and gave you that scar. God rest his soul. He was a good cousin, but that attitude must run in your blood inside the family. He coughed up some smoke and took in a deep breath. What about that kid? Tony buried his anger about Eli bringing up his father and his scar. He knew better to show any emotion and act when he was told to act. To this day, no one in the family spoke often of his father or mother or how they died. About 10 years ago, his parents were out to a family party, and they brought him. He was a teenager at the time. Their car was on an empty freeway late in the evening on their way home and was ran off the road. Tony remembered every second of it. A jet black car struck the tail end of his parents' 1999 Cadillac DeVille and threw it off the road, twisted and tumbled right into a tree where the body of the car warped and wrapped itself tightly around it like it was made of melting rubber. He was lucky enough to escape with a scar on his face from falling into the glass window of the passenger's door. But his parents were not so lucky. Tony remembered specifically that his mother was still conscious after the accident. Although his vision was blurred, he heard her asking if he was okay, and telling him that everything would be fine. His father was pinned into the driver's chair by a piece of metal that tore right through his body and wasn't speaking. After the accident, an ambulance came and tucked him and his parents away to the hospital. His mother was murmuring all the way to the ambulance. The next day, they were pronounced dead at the scene before the ambulances had even arrived. Tony believed that they were murdered, and he pretended not to have any memory of the event for his own safety. But to this day, he remembered every moment, up until he went under at the hospital. His name is Connor, Tony said. Connor, Eli said. Connor O'Reilly. We didn't exchange pleasantries of last names, Tony murmured, still trying to keep his voice at a normal level. Eli's expression grew very serious, and he leaned forward in his leather chair with a loud squeak from the leather rubbing against his dress pants. You mean to tell me, he began in a low voice, that we have the son of Brandon O'Reilly sitting in our fucking waiting room? Uh-oh, Tony thought. Braden O'Reilly was the top of the top. Not a little pretender boss like Eli was, but the head of the entire Irish mob on the East Coast. It was well known that Braden and his wife had a lot of trouble producing a child. She had 2 miscarriages and had given birth to 1 autistic daughter, but after a few years of trying, news spread that Braden had a baby boy. The Irish were celebrating all over the East Coast like it was Christmas, and the Giangotti family was keeping very close tabs on the entire situation. Eli's eyes lit up like it was Christmas time, and he was fucking Santa Claus. Oh no, he chuckled, picking up his office phone and pointing at Tony. Dennis is, or excuse me, Braden's older brother, that, he paused, grinning out the doorway, is Connor fucking O'Reilly, Braden O'Reilly's son. Has to be. I gotta call Frank. I gotta call him. Frank was the head of the Giangotti crime family, and Tony's father's oldest brother. What are you still doing standing here? Take the kid back to your place and keep an eye on him. I can't have that shit in this joint, you understand? Tony turned without a word and made his way out the door. Hey, and get Jim in here, would you? Eli shouted. When Tony walked into the waiting area, he saw Lou leaning over his reception counter with a bloody bag of ice on his head, and Jim sitting next to a gagged and bound Connor, pistol in hand. What's the matter with you? Tony shouted. He's a kid, not a professional hitman. He'd try to take my gun, Jim chuckled. Whatever, listen, give me the kid, I'm watching him today. Tony grabbed Connor off the chair with force and let him out the front door. "Oh, and Eli wants to see you in his office, Jim." "Hey, where are you gonna go?" Lou shouted over to Tony, who let the door close shut behind him without a response. He knew that if this was really Braden's son, and he killed Braden's brother, he may have just started a large turn of events that may change his life forever. Eli watched Jim with eager eyes as he entered his office, looking rather bewildered from struggling with Connor. "Close the door and sit down," Eli murmured, hanging up the phone, which he never had used. "Who you talking to?" Jim asked curiously. "No one, moron." Eli huffed and shook his head. "This has worked out perfectly, cousin. The son of Braden freaking O'Reilly, that was just sitting in my cleaners. This will be the perfect piece to play in our grand campaign." Jim rubbed his chin. "Well, aren't you going to tell Frank about this? It could endanger the entire family." "No, Jim, endanger Frank. It'll endanger Frank and his little nephew that's been hanging on far too long. All we gotta do is lean back and let the O'Reillys make the first move."